Hello and welcome to Dane Explains. This is a subject I've avoided for a while because, well, you're literally not allowed to express certain opinions on a certain platform that it'll remain nameless. Even if you're correct. I already stepped it once with one video and I plan to avoid that in the future. Yes, sorry people, freedom of speech is dead. And yes, I've made a video on that. But I think I figured out a way to talk about the subject. In this video, I'll refer to these as face rags, and the thing everyone knows they're supposed to protect you from as the Fauci Fever. I thought this would be a good subject to cover now, as we go into the cold, flu, and now Fauci Fever season. So sadly, there's been a lot of misinformation out there on this subject. Given my background in molecular biology, I've been itching to do a video on this. So do face rags work? Well, they do and they don't. Let me explain why. First off, I'm not going to talk about cloth reusable face rags here. How well they work is highly variable. So yeah, I'm basically going to ignore them from this point. Anyway, studies on face rags have been all over the map. No small part of that is the confirmation bias of the people conducting the studies. You could say that just makes them inaccurate, but that's probably not the case with most of the studies. You just bake in the result you want in the way you conduct the study. If you want to make it look like face rags work, you simply do a study with medical professionals who have always had to wear them with their jobs and have been trained on how to use them and what exactly each type is good for. Or, of course, you take regular people and train them on how to use them like medical professionals. If they didn't work as they were intended, obviously medical professionals wouldn't have been using them for the last 100 years. Make them look like they don't work is easy. Just give people the face rags and ask them to wear them without any interaction, which ironically is almost everyone. There are, of course, environmental conditions that alter how well face rags work, especially if you're using one in a way that it wasn't intended to be used, like using surgical face rags to protect yourself from the Fauci fever from other people. More on that in a minute, it's a little complicated. I mean, they're called surgical face rags for a reason, because they are intended to be used by surgeons during surgery to prevent larger microbes like bacteria getting from the surgeon's mouth and nose into the patient's open wounds. This is why you will also often hear that face rags only work when the person who is sick is wearing them. Again, when you're talking about surgical face rags, that's true. Now, you're probably saying to yourself, wait a second, didn't you just say that they only stop the larger microbes? Well, when the virus particles come out of your nose and mouth, they are in water droplets that are much larger than the virion particles themselves. Of course, like I mentioned a minute ago, people don't know how to wear them anyway. If the face rag isn't sealed to your face, then the only thing it's actually doing is preventing you from touching your face. Anyway, more of that in a minute. Because of all these issues, I only trust face rag efficacy studies that have been conducted before the Fauci fever. And yes, these studies still count for the Fauci fever because they also include other closely related viruses. Anyway, what's interesting is surgical face rags have been shown to work better in many cases than the N95 face rags. Now on its face, this sounds really weird, especially with so many people saying that the Fauci fever will slip right through surgical face rags and that only the N95 face rags have a fine enough filter to catch the virions. And this is true. They are. But that totally misses the point. The studies that look at it that way specifically are highly controlled lab studies, typically involving simulated viruses being pulled through a face rag on a machine. The real world is a much different place, even for medical professionals. The biggest issue, of course, here is compliance. N95 face rags are very stuffy. Someone wearing them is much more likely to take it off more frequently. Another issue, especially if you're your average person, is that they seldom wear the face rag correctly. It's not tight against their face. Any air that slips around the edge of the face rag gets passed unfiltered. The holes in the N95 face rag are smaller than the holes in the surgical type. This might sound like a good thing, but they let less air through. So when you wear an N95 face rag loosely, more of the air slips around the face rag than with the surgical type. Basically, it becomes less effective than the surgical face rag. It helps if you use the kind of face rag that straps over and behind your head, because it's easier to make a seal than the ones that just loop behind your ears. Because, it's actually possible to wear those correctly without modifying them. Anyway, the kicker is an issue I alluded to earlier. Virus particles are generally contained inside droplets of water. So, the cross-section is actually much larger than the people who conduct the tightly controlled studies assume. This is also the reason people are more likely to catch something in the winter. Not only more people indoors, the air is drier. That means any water droplets that are expelled by someone in a sneeze or a cough evaporates more quickly, leading to smaller particle sizes. This allows them to slip through smaller holes, stay suspended in the air longer, and when they do land on a membrane they can infect, they're in a smaller pool, so to speak, so it takes them less time to find a host cell to infect, improving their chances of evading the immune system. It also doesn't help that the design of a lot of face rags, with the loops on the ears, make it so you can't wear them tight without tying the loops or something. And then you're going to be forced to remove the face rag pretty often so your ears don't turn purple and fall off. Loose-fitting face rags in general are pretty useless anyway, for the reasons I already mentioned. Whether the sick person is wearing it or the healthy person, the air from your breathing just completely goes around the face rag. Pretty much the only way they work is by preventing you from touching your own mouth and nose, although that actually does go a long way to slow the spread of a virus. With that in mind, having a face rag mandate only for the unjabbed people doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Jabbed people are more likely to be asymptomatic carriers of the Fauci Fever, and the biggest way they're going to spread it is by touching their mouth and nose, since they aren't sneezing and coughing, which the average face rag wearer is not going to be substantially protected from anyway. Most are also under the false impression that the jab prevents them from catching the Fauci fever, rather than just increasing their chances of having an asymptomatic case. At least if you know you're sick, you're hopefully smart enough to stay home. Pandemic of the unjabbed mind. Anyway, what's the point I'm getting at here? Well, it's a mixed bag. Face rags work if you wear them correctly. Even the surgical type. Although the winter, you might want to go with the tight-fitting N95 type due to the smaller, more prevalent virion particles. But there haven't been any studies done on the effectiveness of the two types taking humidity into account. So that's just conjecture on my part. If you can't or don't know how to wear a face rag correctly, which again is the vast majority of people, they don't do a whole lot to protect you from airborne viruses. The best thing anyone can do is to wash their hands and to use hand sanitizer when washing can't be done. I know I haven't said much about mandates, but this video really isn't about that. But I'll give them a little mention before I go. What's my opinion on them? Well, I think they're a giant overreach of government power, whether you're talking about the jab or face rags. Although I think the jab mandates are much more dangerous for our freedom than the face rag mandates. But the first certainly was the stepping stone for the second. Now, if a private business is asking you to wear a face rag, it's their business, and I think that should be respected. Most of the time, you can just shop somewhere else if you don't want to wear a face rag, and it's their loss. So the takeaway is, wear a face rag if you want, or don't if you don't. But if you're going to wear one, wear it right. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please press the like button, subscribe to my channel, and ding the bell to get notified when I post new videos. Also, please support me on Patreon, link in the description. The more people who support me, the more time I can dedicate to making videos like this one. So, until next time, have a great week.